Before Quen Blackwell was posting thirst traps with captions that made you do a double take. Before she was in Billie Eilish's orbit. Before she was being accused of scamming people for a fake $100K couch. She was just a kid. From Dallas, Texas. With an iPhone camera and a mouth that didn't know how to stay shut. She was 12 years old when she started uploading clips to Vine. The year was 2013. Barack Obama was president. Vine was the hottest thing in app stores. And the idea of going viral wasn't something people planned, it just happened. Quentin's handle was @Quensadila. She didn't have a lighting setup. She didn't have a script. And she definitely didn't have a niche. She just had the audacity to hit record. Her content was chaotic. Screaming into the camera. Weird facial expressions. Mimicking beauty tutorials with dollar store makeup. One second she was pretending to cry in the car. The next, she was lip-syncing aggressively a Disney Channel theme song. There wasn't any strategy, no brand identity. She was just being funny. Or what she thought was funny. But here's the thing. It worked. Vine wasn't about perfection. It was about personality. And Quen had more than enough to go around. By the time Vine was gasping for air in late 2016, Quen had racked up over 500,000 followers and more than 500 million loops. And she did it without ever doing a collaboration, a giveaway, or a brand deal. She wasn't a social media star. She was just a funny black girl from Texas with a cracked phone and a sharp tongue. And when Vine died, a lot of people assumed Quen would die with it. But they didn't know her. And they definitely didn't know what was coming next. It was messy, intimate, hilarious, and surprisingly deep. She talked about therapy, about feeling numb, about how LA was both her dream and her downfall. The same year, she signed with Creative Artists Agency, CAA, a major power move. But not everything was going up. In May 2024, her world was shattered. Her older brother, Quen Blackwell, was killed in a homicide. She went quiet. When she returned, she posted, "I'm not okay, but I'm here. And I'm going to make something out of this pain." Fans flooded her with support. Even people who once hated her started seeing her in a different light. For the first time, the internet saw Quen not just as a joke, but as a person. When Vine officially shut down in January 2017, it left thousands of creators scrambling. But Quen, she didn't scramble, she pivoted. Sort of. She wasn't immediately trying to go viral again. She wasn't rushing to build a personal brand. She was just doing what she always did, talking into a camera like it was her therapist, her diary, and her best friend all at once. This time, her new platform of choice was YouTube. Her first uploads weren't shiny. They weren't edited with overlays or jump cuts. They were raw, long pauses, uncomfortable silences, tangents that led nowhere. But that's what made her different. She wasn't performing for the camera. She was just being. And in a landscape full of influencers carefully polishing every second of footage, that kind of honesty cut deep. She'd post story times where she'd start talking about a makeup product and end up sobbing about middle school trauma. She'd promise a haul and deliver a monologue about depression. And her titles reflected that too. "I don't want to do this anymore. Am I okay? GRWM. Get ready with me. But I'm spiraling." There were moments where she'd sit in complete silence on camera for 30 seconds straight, then suddenly burst out laughing, or crying, or both. You couldn't tell if it was a joke. And that's why people kept watching. This was around the time Twitter started to really pick her up. Screenshots of her video captions. Still frames of her mid-meltdown with unhinged subtitles. Clips of her whispering something completely deranged into the mic, like, "Don't ask me how I'm doing unless you want a lawsuit." Her presence online wasn't manufactured. It was magnetic. She wasn't chasing virality. Virality was chasing her. And slowly but surely, people started connecting the dots. "Oh wait, she's that girl from Vine. She's the one who did the 'my therapist said I'm fine but my iPhone notes say otherwise' video, right? She's the girl who made crying in the car look iconic. By late 2018, Quenlin's YouTube started gaining serious traction. Not in a traditional brand-safe subscribe for new videos every Tuesday kind of way. More like a quiet cult following. Girls who felt too weird for beauty, YouTube too sad for TikTok dances, and too smart for Twitter threads. They found Quenlin. And Quenlin, for the first time, found an audience that didn't just watch her. They understood her. It was around this time that people stopped calling her a Vine reject and started calling her what she actually was. One of the internet's most interesting creators. But with more eyes comes more pressure, more critics, more comparisons. And soon Quenlin's messy online persona would start bleeding into real-world headlines where things weren't so easy to laugh off. By 2020, Quen Blackwell wasn't just known for her chaotic humor. She was known for saying too much, too often, and way too online. It was kind of her thing. She'd tweet things like, "I just screamed at my DoorDash driver, then cried because I love him." And, "I hope my future kids understand I was mentally ill with a ring light." To her followers, it was hilarious, honest, deeply relatable. But to outsiders, Quenlin seemed unstable. And that tension came to a head in October 2020, when she casually dropped a bomb on TikTok. "Living with Diplo has been amazing. He lets me use the studio and makes me feel safe." Wait, Diplo, the 41-year-old DJ, and Quenlin, who had just turned 19. It sounded like the start of a Reddit horror thread. The internet did not take it well. Within hours, she was trending on Twitter. People were accusing Diplo of grooming. Others were accusing Quenlin of romanticizing a dangerous power imbalance. Some people didn't even know who Quenlin was until this moment. It blew up fast. And it got dark even faster. She tried to clarify things with a tweet. "I'm an adult. I'm safe. I'm not being groomed. It's a platonic living situation." Diplo also chimed in, saying she was staying in a guest house and that he was simply helping her out because she didn't feel safe at home. He called the allegations gross, but the damage was already done. Even though nothing illegal happened, the optics were messy. And messy optics are all it takes to ruin a reputation in the age of screenshots. Some of her longtime fans defended her. "She's clearly telling the truth. She's always been impulsive. This is just Quenlin being Quenlin." But others weren't so forgiving. They saw it as another example of her oversharing without thinking. And some began questioning whether her chaotic persona was an act or a warning sign. Quenlin had always lived on the edge of irony and sincerity. That line was part of what made her content so unique. But now that line was getting blurry. And people weren't laughing like they used to. She started getting labeled things she never intended. Reckless, attention-seeking, manipulative, and worst of all, dangerous to younger fans. And while that may have been harsh, the internet doesn't really do nuance. This wasn't just a tweet that aged poorly. This was a narrative shift. Quen Blackwell wasn't just the funny girl from Vine anymore. She was now being seen as part of a bigger conversation. What happens when being real online goes too far? Her brand, built entirely on brutal honesty, was now the very thing that might ruin her. And as we'd soon see, this wasn't going to be her last public disaster. By the time 2022 rolled around, Quen Blackwell had mastered the art of being chronically online. She wasn't posting to go viral anymore. She was posting because she couldn't not. It was her impulse, her coping mechanism, her platform, and her poison. And that's when it happened. On a random weekday afternoon, she uploaded a TikTok that would go down in influencer internet infamy. "I accidentally bought a $100,000 couch. I didn't mean to. Please help. I'm literally begging. Please send money." No context, no explanation. Just a girl in distress, allegedly $100K in debt over furniture. The video was short, simple, and incredibly effective. Within 24 hours, it had spread across every social platform. Some people laughed. Some people were confused. But most people were furious. They thought she was serious. Here was a rich influencer crying about a six-figure couch in the middle of a cost-of-living crisis when people were struggling to pay rent, afford groceries, or survive medical bills. TikTokers stitched her video with angry rants. Twitter tore her apart with think pieces. Reddit called her delusional and everything wrong with Gen Z. And that's when she revealed the truth. It was a joke, a satire. She never bought a couch. There was no $100 K. It was a bit. A parody of influencer entitlement and digital begging culture. But by then, the backlash was already fully cooked and served. Even after the reveal, people weren't impressed. Because here's the thing about satire. If your joke isn't obvious, you become the thing you're mocking. And for a lot of people, Quen looked less like a satirical genius and more like another influencer, cosplaying as poor for attention. It didn't help that this wasn't her first time towing the line. She had a history of chaotic posts, crying for money one day, flexing designer the next. To her fans, that was just her brand. Unstable, ironic, and self-aware. But to outsiders, she was beginning to look like a trust fund kid playing the internet for sport. She addressed the backlash in true Quen fashion. Not with an apology video, not with PR management, but with a TikTok of her screaming in the shower while holding a Target receipt. She captioned it, "Me after getting cancelled for a couch that doesn't exist." That was Quen. Always doubling down. Always making a joke out of the mob. But deep down, something had shifted. The comment sections weren't all love anymore. Her name was getting dragged into influencer call-out videos. And people were starting to tune in, not because they loved her, but because they were waiting for her to mess up again. In trying to parody influencer culture, she'd accidentally become the face of it. And for someone whose entire career was built on being misunderstood on purpose, this time, people misunderstood her for real. After the Diplo scandal and the $100 K couch backlash, you'd think Quen Blackwell might slow down, lay low, rebrand quietly. But she didn't. If anything, she leaned in harder. Not into apologies, not into polished branding, but into being the kind of unhinged that can't be faked. And in that chaos came something new. Something no one expected. A cooking show. But not just any cooking show. It was called Feeding Starving Influencers. The title itself felt like satire. And yet, it worked. Quen would invite popular creators to her chaotic kitchen. There were no prep lists, no mise en place, just vibes, ingredients, and usually some form of emotional collapse. She didn't cook like a chef. She cooked like a sleep-deprived drama kid, trying to impress a Tinder date. And yet, guests kept showing up. Lil Nas X, Lil Yachty, Charli D'Amelio, major internet celebrities. All in Quenlin's mismatched kitchen. All trying not to break character as she dumped honey on pasta or aggressively grated cheese while trauma dumping mid-boil. The format was absurd. The editing was unpredictable. But under all the madness was a genuine sense of intimacy. Because while everyone else in Hollywood was faking depth, Quen was giving people real conversations in between burnt chicken and undercooked eggs. The show wasn't about the food. It was about the dysfunction, the shared influencer fatigue, the emotional rawness that everyone else was scared to show. And for once, the internet rewarded her. Clips went viral on TikTok. Not because they were scandalous, but because they were real. One moment she was joking about being a failed child star with no star power. The next, she was holding back tears while telling Lil Nas X she didn't know who she was outside of the internet. She wasn't just hosting a show. She was documenting a generation of creators having a midlife crisis in their early 20s. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't monetized. But it was culture. This era also marked the beginning of a broader shift in how people saw her. Up until now, Quen had existed on the edges of the mainstream. Too strange for brand deals. Too ironic for algorithm optimization. Too black for traditional influencer boxes. But too chaotic for the black girl magic aesthetic. But then, something started to change. She was being claimed by the alt-black girls space. By creators who didn't fit the mold. By fans who were tired of polished, Pinterest-coded influencers and wanted someone real, loud, sad, messy, and brilliant. On Twitter, threads started appearing like, "No one is doing it like Quen Blackwell. She's the blueprint for Gen Z's messy vulnerability." People weren't just laughing at her anymore. They were studying her, admiring her, referencing her in essays and video essays and tweets that began with "No, but seriously." She was no longer just a funny girl who got famous for screaming into the void. She was now a cultural figure, a voice for a generation raised on overstimulation, underparenting, and iPhone trauma. And her kitchen? That became her stage, where she took the mess and cooked something unforgettable out of it. Quen Blackwell has never really announced anything about her sexuality. She never did the dramatic coming out video. Never released a merch line that said queer in sparkly block letters. She just existed. One moment she was thirst tweeting over Timothée Chalamet. The next, she was posting TikToks where she was aggressively making out with a homegirl as a punchline. Or maybe not a punchline. Nobody knew. Which is exactly what made it so interesting. Her fanbase didn't demand clarity. They just rolled with it. Quen lived in that chaotic middle space between "I'll kiss anyone for the bit" and "actually, maybe that wasn't a bit." And that ambiguity worked until it didn't. Because in April 2024, everything changed. It was Coachella weekend, and the influencers were out in full force. People were dressed in mesh, dehydration, and desperate brand collaborations. But then a blurry, shaky clip started circulating. Quen Blackwell, Billie Eilish, kissing, not on a stage, not in a skit, just in the crowd. At a set, two girls swaying to music, lips touching, caught on someone's iPhone camera from 30 feet away. No captions, no context, just one short video, and the internet exploded. On Twitter, "Dylan is real. This is the gayest thing I've ever seen in my life. I knew there was something between them during that one IG live in 2022. Oh my god, why does this feel like fan fiction but real?" On TikTok, edits, zoom-ins, slow-mo compilations with Lana Del Rey in the background. People were analyzing Billie's body language like it was the Zapruder film. Suddenly, Quen wasn't just a funny internet girl. She was now in Billie Eilish's orbit. Some fans were elated. Some were confused. Some were skeptical. Because Billie has always been extremely private about her personal life. And this felt like an unapproved leak of intimacy. Both of them stayed silent. No confirmation. No clarification. And as always, the silence was louder than any press statement could have been. For the next few weeks, Quenlin's name started trending again. Not because of controversy. Not because of a joke gone too far. But because people genuinely wanted to know her. Who was she to Billie? Was it a fling? A queer experiment? A moment of festival euphoria? Nobody had answers. And Quen, of course, was busy posting TikToks about eating frozen blueberries while crying over eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. Because she never addresses things directly. That's the game. But this moment wasn't just about Billie. It cracked open a bigger conversation. People started compiling old clips of Quen and Odessa Adlan, actress, known best as Jaden Smith's ex, and a familiar face in LA's artsy lesbian scene. Fans had already speculated for years that the two were more than just friends. The sleepovers, the inside jokes, the intimacy that felt just a little too charged. Nothing was ever confirmed. But in the wake of the Billie kiss, those old clips took on new meaning. And just like that, Quen became something new. The internet's favorite queer-coded enigma. A Gen Z icon of fluidity. Of not putting labels on anything. Of saying, "I love her so much I want to throw her into traffic." and meaning it. But with that came criticism too. Some accused her of queerbaiting, of using girl-on-girl moments for attention, of dipping into queerness when it was trendy, but not showing up for the community in real ways. Others defended her fiercely. She never claimed anything. Y'all just assumed. Why does every girl need to explain her kisses on command? Let the chaotic bisexuals have their fun. And in the middle of all this noise, Quenlin just kept posting, cooking, oversharing, laughing, not saying a word, because that's her power. She doesn't clarify. She doesn't apologize. She just moves. And we follow. Confused, obsessed, infatuated. There's one thing even the loudest influencers can't laugh through: loss. And in May 2024, Quen Blackwell experienced it in the most violent, public, and devastating way possible. Her older brother Quen Blackwell was murdered. The news broke like a whisper at first, just a few cryptic posts, a sudden silence from Quenlin, and then confirmation. She didn't make a big announcement. No video, no live stream, no funny caption, just a photo of him. A simple message: my best friend, my protector, my brother. I can't believe this is real. And for a creator who'd built her entire brand on oversharing, that quiet hit even harder than a scream. Fans were shaken, not just because someone died, but because Quenlin actually stopped posting. For days, then weeks. No chaotic tweets, no random car rants, no unhinged TikToks about pasta or cry laughing in public bathrooms. Just stillness. And when she did return, it wasn't to be funny. She posted a 15-second video with puffy eyes and no makeup, whispering, "He would have wanted me to keep being crazy, but I'm not okay." That was it. No punchline. No irony. Just truth. Details about the murder weren't public for long. All we know is that Quen was 25. A father, a brother, a friend, and someone Quenlin had spoken about often. Always with love, admiration, and that protective energy you only talk about when someone truly meant the world to you. To lose someone like that, in such a sudden, violent way, it didn't just hurt, it restructured her entire world. Fans began digging through her old tweets, photos of them together, videos where she mentioned him in passing, laughing about how he used to make fun of her skincare routine or how he said her cooking show was unhinged, but low-key fire. And suddenly, those moments weren't just quirky anymore. They were memorials. This moment marked a major shift in Quenlin's internet presence. Not because she stopped being funny, but because even when she tried to return to normal content, something in her tone had changed. It was more tired, less performative, more emotionally open than ever before, but also more guarded. Her jokes landed differently. Her silences became heavier, and fans noticed. Some commented, "She's grieving, but she's still trying to make us laugh." That's love. You can see the pain in her eyes, even when she's acting wild. Others said nothing, just liked, shared, and let her grieve in peace, which is rare for the internet. But somehow, people collectively agreed to hold space, because even if you didn't know her, you felt that loss. And even if she never makes a documentary about it, that grief lives in everything she's posted since. If you had told the internet in 2018 that Quen Blackwell, the girl known for crying in her car while wearing half a lash, would one day become the face of a major fashion campaign, no one would have believed you. She didn't look like a model, not in the Instagram baddie way. Not in the clean girl, dewy glow, linen-draped kind of way either. She was loud, crooked, cartoonish, and unapologetically chaotic. But that was exactly why it worked. By 2023, brands were starting to realize something. The audience didn't want perfection anymore. They wanted character. They wanted edge. They wanted Quenlin. Her first big splash came in Savage X Fenty. Of course it did. Rihanna's lingerie brand was built on inclusivity and personality, and Quenlin brought both in excess. The campaign dropped like a glitch in the Matrix. There she was. Hair slicked, lips glossy, eyes wild. Giving face, yes, but also giving personality. One shot had her biting her lip, borderline unhinged. Another had her staring directly into the camera like she was about to either seduce you or insult your shoes. Maybe both. It wasn't polished. It was alive. And people noticed. The comments were filled with, "Is this Quen? Wait, why is she actually eating this up?" Unironically obsessed. This is what we mean when we say alt-baddie. The internet wasn't used to seeing her like this. Not because she couldn't pull it off, but because she never tried to. And yet, when she stepped into fashion, she didn't clean up her act. She just repurposed the mess into an aesthetic. After Savage X Fenty, the bookings kept rolling in. Urban Outfitters, Marc Jacobs, Beauty, smaller streetwear brands, trying to rebrand with edge. She even walked in a low-key LA fashion show during 2024 Fashion Week, wearing platform boots, smudged eyeliner, and an ironic "I hate models" tee. And somehow, it made sense. Because while traditional influencers were still chasing Fashion Nova deals and clean pastel feeds, Quen carved out a niche in something much rarer. She was visibly unpolished, yet still aspirational. Fashion girlies started to notice. Alt-black girls, queer-coded models, people who didn't see themselves in the Zara x Kendall aesthetic. Suddenly, Quen was a reference point. Tumblr posts about unhinged beauty, photo mood boards labeled pretty and loud like Quen, TikToks breaking down her campaign shots frame by frame like they were editorial essays. She became style-coded, not by choice, but by vibe. Because she didn't sell clothes, she sold a feeling. The feeling of being both beautiful and unbearable. Feminine but feral. Unfiltered but unmistakably magnetic. That's not just fashion. That's iconography. If you ask most people what Quen Blackwell does, they'll stumble. She's not a full-time YouTuber. Not a traditional TikToker. Not a stand-up. Not a fashion influencer. And yet, you've seen her face. Or at least, you've seen her screaming. Or sobbing. Or smearing makeup across her cheeks mid-rant. Or staring deadpan into the camera with captions like, "Me eating ice because I'm sad, not anemic." That's the thing about Quen. She doesn't need to fit into a category. Because she became a genre. The memes started early. Screenshots from old YouTube videos. Reaction images of her mid-blink crying in the car, whispering threats with lip gloss dripping off her chin. They got reposted everywhere, by stan accounts, by sad girl Twitter, by chronically online 17-year-olds who didn't even know who she was, just that her face said what they were feeling. She became one of those girls whose image outgrew her name. And that's both a blessing and a curse. Because while her comedy was taking over the timeline, most people didn't realize she was doing it on purpose. People often assumed Quen was just accidentally funny, that she didn't know what she was doing, that her chaos was raw and unscripted and uncalculated. But anyone who actually paid attention could see the truth. Quen was a comedian, not in the Netflix special kind of way. In the Gen Z performance art via TikTok and self-destruction kind of way. Her delivery was unmatched. Dry. Sarcastic. Completely deadpan even when her voice was cracking. Her tweets read like punchlines disguised as breakdowns. "If I die, I want my coffin to have LED lights and a Bluetooth speaker that plays Doja Cat. My therapist said I'm doing better, but I just lied so she wouldn't call anyone." She mastered a very specific tone, delusional, depressed, and self-aware to the point of horror. Her fans knew. They studied her like a syllabus. They'd say things like, "Quen invented the genre of laughing so you don't scream, but you're still screaming. Her humor is what people think they're doing when they tweet me versus me." She didn't post jokes. She was the joke. And that was the point. But the mainstream never quite caught up. They'd either dismiss her as another TikTok girl with no structure, or lump her into the vague, unhinged influencer category like it was a flaw. Even now, Quenlin rarely gets credited for what she created. A style of chaotic humor that blurred the line between real mental spirals and performance art. She made people laugh and feel slightly haunted. She created comedy that you had to replay 3 times because you weren't sure if it was scripted or a cry for help. She invented the digital version of crying in the bathroom of a Target while live streaming and eating pretzels and made it funny. And in that space, she became something way bigger than an influencer. She became a meme deity. And yet, there's still this lingering sense that we never fully appreciated her in real time. That someday, years from now, someone will write a thesis about the way Quen Blackwell captured the spiritual nausea of being too online in your early 20s. But for now, she'll keep tweeting things like, "If I get famous, please don't bring up the time I tried to marry a chair in 2017, and let the memes do the rest." It's 2025, and Quen Blackwell is still online, still chaotic, still hilarious, still unpredictable, but different. Not quieter, not tamed, just older, slightly more scarred, slightly more knowing, and somehow more powerful than ever. She doesn't post as much as she used to, but when she does, it spreads. A TikTok of her fake crying over oat milk hits 3 million likes in a weekend. A tweet saying, "Thinking of deleting my personality to become a candle girl," gets screenshot by 100 aesthetic accounts. Her presence is less constant, but more impactful. She's no longer fighting the algorithm. She is the algorithm, and she's fully aware of the fact that her mess has always been her message. In interviews, rare ones, she speaks slower now, pauses more. She's reflective, but still jokes halfway through every sentence. She talks about grief, talks about family, talks about how internet fame made her feel both invincible and disposable. And in those moments, you start to realize something. Quen Blackwell was never just a funny girl online. She was a survival story. Someone who figured out how to weaponize her own pain before the internet could use it against her. Someone who turned embarrassment into comedy, breakdowns into content, grief into art. She didn't beat the system. She became its most honest mirror. And yet, she still doesn't want your labels. She's not a brand. She's not an alt-black icon. She's not a poster child for mental health, even though she's talked about hers more candidly than any celebrity ever has. She's just Quenlin, that same girl who started on Vine when she was 12, screaming into her phone, cracking jokes no one understood, and building a cult following out of nothing. And she's still here. No scandals took her out. No brand cancellation ended her. No controversy was ever too big to laugh at. Eventually, she survived the internet. And in doing so, she became one of the few creators who feels more real now than she did at the start. So what is her legacy? Maybe it's this: that it's okay to be ugly and brilliant and hilarious and broken and vibrant and exhausted all at once. That oversharing can be its own kind of poetry. That chaos, when wielded right, can be healing. And that not everything needs to be polished to be profound. Because for all her jokes, for all her mess, and for all her random car videos where she screams at her steering wheel, Quen Blackwell made people feel seen, not just liked, not just followed, seen. And maybe that's the most human kind of influence there is. The lore of Quen Blackwell isn't over. She's still living it, still documenting it, still making us laugh, squirm, cry, and scroll. But one thing's clear: whether you knew her as a Quensadilla, or the couch girl, or the Billie Eilish kiss, or the meme with the smeared mascara, you knew her. And you'll remember her, not because she asked you to, but because she burned herself into internet history without ever asking for permission. And maybe that's what made her iconic in the first place.